Sure, there's one. Mr. Malcolmson?
Yeah, Bob Malcolmson, Greater Oxford Chamber of Commerce. Just a question, and it relates to what Ron said when he asked at the start about how many people in the room are from nuclear sector. And I had a conversation with Mr. Little last evening. The Carolinas versus Durham region comparison about what we have and what we don't have. I guess my question is, why don't we have nuclear businesses in Durham region other than the 2 reactors? And if you take a look in Mississauga, they probably got, maybe 100, 150 businesses that are related to that. Why, and maybe you guys can give us a reason, why aren't they here? Is it because we're not courting them? We don't have a strategic plan? Maybe we can get some insight from the 3 of you.
Okay. Let me start because I know the history, and then Jim can tell us how to change it.
Boy, it doesn't matter.
I think a lot of the smaller companies located in the west of Toronto, Mississauga, Oakville, because that's where the major reactor vendor is located. Candu Energy was in the west part of Ontario, and the small companies who wanted to work in nuclear had to become sub-suppliers of the large integrated reactor company called, at the time it was AECL, it's now called Candu Energy. So that's one of the reasons. And then once you're established in a certain area, the clusters began to grow and smaller companies located there. I fully share the view that I hear from Adrian and Rogers of why don't some of these guys move out here? I'm all for that, but I don't have the control. So Jim, maybe you can tell us how we can make that happen.
It's like when I was in high school, if you wanted to go to the dance, you had to ask the girl. And no one ever called me up and said, want to go to a dance. The key here is you have to ask. You gotta approach Candu and say, why aren't you here? You gotta approach OPG or whoever and say, well, if you're buying services from them, why aren't you doing it locally? Aren't you a part of this community? So you've got to, and this is a role where government and organizations like Chambers of Commerce can take a role to facilitate that dinner meeting. Hey, look, here's how we can all win, okay? Utilities, like I said before, are socioeconomic institutions. They have an obligation to provide reliable, safe, efficient, environmentally friendly sources of energy for our economy, but also our community. So let's think about the community here. You've parked the plant here, and a lot of people work there, but why can't others work here more efficiently? So it is, if you said to Candu, why you have an office here? Well, because they're not going to give us any business. Well, then you look at the utility and say, why aren't you giving them business? You're buying from them anyway. So you got to facilitate that conversation and make it happen. So you got to ask. You got to put. You don't care about the past. Well, you're going to get the, I call the but people. Well, but you got to understand. No, I don't have to understand. Oh, how about a small business? How about 10 people? And I'll get back to the point where people said, how many people in the nuclear business small? The answer is all of you are. You just don't realize it. You're all consumers, number one, right? How many people have software businesses? Utilities use software. How many people in human resources or insurance? Utilities use them. So if you start mapping out these clusters, you'll find out through some way, shape, or form, you're going to have a role in the industry that's here. You just got to find it, and you got to ask. So my short answer is that there's no there's no limit to the possibilities. You just got to be insistent and keep pushing, and then say, if not, why not? So that's the short answer. That's how we started doing that. We weren't waiting for anybody to ask us to the prom. We went out and asked the girls. Short answer.
I'm the founding chair of our Durham Strategic Energy Alliance, which is an energy cluster. And we had a lot of success. We got money from the province. We put some things together, and we attracted energy companies to the area. But I think the main hurdle at the time, this was probably about 8 years ago when we started that, and that now has morphed into Spark, so it's been very successful. But the main hurdle is probably some of the infrastructure things that we've had out in this area. So we've not had the highways, the 407 wasn't being built. We didn't maybe have some of the things that we do have today. So I really think there's a window today to, as you say, go out and ask the girl to dance and make those approaches, because those may have been made in the past, and we probably could have made more of them, but I think now some of the critical things that need to be in place for companies to locate out here, like you look at Mississauga, not only did they have Hazel McCallion, but she's gone now, they had all the highways, and they had all the infrastructure. They had the airport. So things are starting to fall in place for us. So if we can find out the right strategy to be able to get some momentum going, we can perhaps be more successful.
Okay, Ron, did you have another comment? Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say that you're seeing now with the big project getting underway at Darlington that many of our companies are setting up branch offices here in the region. Aecon, S&C Laval, and others are moving here. So as that project gets underway and the big spending starts to happen, I think you'll see project offices. You don't have to have the head office here. You just want to have people who live here and spend money here.
Okay, very good. Okay, we have a question at the microphone.
Jerry Anderson with Logicon Solutions. Jim, I've done a fair amount of work at Greensboro and also Cary, and one thing I'm amazed about is the interaction between and the tight integration between the universities and the business community down there, especially Clemson, Fordham in the Greensboro area, and then you've got UNC around the Cary area, and they've got a very strong technology triangle going there as well. What was the secret? And I kind of say, hey, it's great if you want to ask them. Ask a girl to the dance, but we need a dance first up here. So how did you start your own dance down there?
What the secret was, you had a university system up there. You had some people willing to invest there in research and development. What we've done actually in E4 Carolinas, the organization I talked about at the end, is we said we've got a constituency down in the Charlotte area, and the research triangle is kind of up there in the mountains, and they got kind of insular. So we've reached out to them. I was the acting president of E4 Carolinas, and I hired my replacement, a guy named David Doctor. He was the #2 guy at the Energy Institute at Duke University and was a constituent of the Research Triangle. So we're kind of making these connections to make that happen. But I think what it was, this opportunity that the Research Triangle provided. And once you had that environment of this talent, tolerance, and technology, then people would naturally go there. So you've got to start with that seed opportunity and grow from there. Just like if you're going to do some form of cluster here, you've got to seed it. You've got to make those initial requests to go to the dance. And now it's not just a dance, but they move in with you. You get married, okay? So, and by the way, I did marry the woman I asked to the prom. So
Good.
40 years ago.
Good for you.
So it worked for me, okay? So I think you have to start with something that's tangible. I think you have to go for small successes. You look at OUIT here. You've got a great, in the other universities, you've got a great institution. You start building that here. The companies start hiring locally here. You'll attract key professors to that, key curriculum to that. You do some R&D and some senior projects funded by, OPG and Bruce and those things as these technology kind of things. Then it starts to pull its momentum. You have to grow it, but you got to plant the seed if it's going to grow. And that's what the Research Triangle started out with years ago, 20 years ago.
Very good. Any other questions from the audience? You have one, Robert? I have one myself, and it's actually I'll ask it of Jim. Jim, I'm interested, since you're from the United States and deal with that infrastructure down there, just how sensitive politically nuclear installations are down there to get built or refurbished, because that appears to be a major challenge for us in Ontario up here.
It's not very sensitive at all. The average American is about 70% favorable towards nuclear, in spite of what you hear in the media. Media only sells stories, right? They don't, if it's just factual, it's not interesting. So you'll hear protests and those kind of things. I mean, who's going to have a news article and everybody was happy? No one's going to read that, right? But in the nuclear communities, it is very pro-nuclear. I mean, they're major economic institutions. They hire a lot of people. They do a lot of community good. So when they see investments like you'd see a refurbishment here, that is a big bump to the economy, big. We've got a new build, 2 nuclear units being built in Jenkinsville, South Carolina. That's $20 billion of investment. 4,500 people work there building that plant. Just about 50 miles away, there's another 2 units being built just over the line into Georgia from South Carolina. That's another 5,000 people. So if you talk to the governor of the state of South Carolina, she's very pro-nuclear. You talk to the governor of North Carolina, very pro-nuclear. So they see this as investments. And a lot of people say, well, there's not a lot of new build going on. You retired 4 plants, there's 4 plants new. There's 100 nuclear plants running in the United States that buy about $400 million of goods and services every year. And they hire a lot of people, average staff 800 per unit. So you think about the employment there. And these units have to last longer now, 60 to 80 years of life in refurbishment and those kind of things. It's environmentally friendly, 0 carbon emissions. It's very reliable. It doesn't get supply chain interruption for fuel, shipments of coal or oil or natural gas. We hit the polar vortex in the Northeast. The average price of natural gas is $4 a million BTUs in the United States. During the polar vortex, it was 15 in the Northeast, and they didn't have the pipeline capacity to serve it. Nuclear plants don't care about that. You fuel them every 2 years in one shot. So it's one of those things in the portfolio. If you were an investor, you have equities and you might have municipal bonds or something like that. The nuclear provides that kind of stability, that surety thing it's going to be there. It's going to be your backstop. So it's a very positive outlook. Most of the issues deal with politics and not economics. The senator from Nevada, Harry Reid, hates Yucca Mountain. He's going to kill it. Well, they just threw him out. The Republicans are going to push Yucca Mountain back again, and the government's going to meet its obligations and find this repository for nuclear waste, and it's going to happen eventually. So nuclear is not talked in the political forefront in the United States because it doesn't matter. It doesn't get you elected or unelected. It's other issues. Immigration, the big issue in the United States right now between the Republicans and the Democrats. Obama's going to give amnesty and those kind of things. But nuclear is in the background, and that's our biggest problem, is that it's in the background. So what we're trying to do is to bring its importance and function to the foreground so people understand the value that it provides.
Okay,
It's a
that's
great
good.
comment. Can I just,
Yeah,
not
go
that
ahead.
that needs any elaboration, but let me just comment that we've got great political support locally here as well. The mayors and the MPs and the MPPs, strong supporters. What we've lacked is the support at the senior provincial and federal level. But that's changing. If any of you watched the media in the last week, you saw that Candu Energy signed a major deal in China, and Prime Minister Harper was there witnessing the signing. And that means a lot in those central economies. They want to see a prime minister there backing in the trade mission. Kathleen Wynne was there a couple of weeks ago. I believe she said some positive things about nuclear. So we've got to move it from the region to the provincial and the federal level, and I think that's starting to happen.
Okay,
I remember hearing Nikki Haley speak here in Toronto about a year ago, and she's very proud of what's going on in South Carolina. Very proud. And we've got to get there with Kathleen Wynne.
But John Kerry, the Secretary of State in the United States, and his predecessor, Hillary Clinton, are very pro-nuclear. They were in India on these trade missions trying to expand that, in spite of the fact that Democrats' view is not nuclear. They were there pushing it. So, and she was the senator from the state of New York when I was running a very large federal nuclear waste cleanup project in upstate New York, and she was my biggest supporter. I spent hours with her. Very pro-nuclear. So it's trade and economics. They're going to be on your side.
Interesting. Okay. Bob, do you have one more question there?
Yeah, I just have a question in regards to the economic strategies or whatever, but how many jobs does it create? What is the economic impact of nuclear in Ontario versus the Carolinas? And Michael, from your aspect, how many good energy jobs do you have in Durham region, and what kind of economic impact you feel that Viridian has for Durham region? I'm just trying to, is it billions of dollars? I'm trying to get an aspect here to say, well, it's great, we've got nuclear, we've got energy, but what is it in dollars and cents that's coming back to the communities? Because those dollars and cents roll over 5, 6, 7 times. So maybe we can start with Ron
Yeah.
and Michael and Jim at the end to give us an aspect of the economic impact.
Well, you know, Bruce Power commissioned a study just a few weeks ago. It was released just before our Queen's Park Day, where they evaluated the impact on the economy, the Ontario economy, of refurbishing another 6 units at Bruce. And the total economic impact was $25 billion, 10,000 jobs. I'm sure OPG, and I'm going to look over at Don over there, has similar numbers. That, I mean, if the 4 units at Darlington are approved, I mean, it's $10 billion roughly in direct spending, but then there's the indirects and all the jobs that come with that. Can you add to that, Don? Have I put you on the spot? Thank you. It's a lot of money. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Michael.
From my perspective, we have about 220 employees in Ajax. So the majority of our workforce, we have satellite operations outside of Durham region, but most of our staff is in Durham region. We see the need for increased staff and interface with the educational institutions in areas like linemen and technical staff. So as you build smart grids out and as you have to build more infrastructure, you might have seen some of the work that's going